Hi everybody, I'm Rob Raybon, and on today's video we're going to talk about all the different colors that have been on my 2011 Ford Mustang. Over the years I've had a lot of people ask me what certain colors were, how I sprayed them, what the pigments were, etc. So I figured I would make a video explaining all that. I bought my Mustang in 2011, it was a factory black car, and it wound up getting keyed and it got resprayed by an auto body shop that did kind of a subpar job. There were some drips and some haze in a clear coat, and around that time I saw a video of somebody plastidipping a car, and I've always been a fan of matte paint, so I figured maybe it was time to give it a try. A matte paint job would have been thousands of dollars, and I could have did vinyl wrap, but I didn't want to spend $2,500 for somebody to put a giant sticker on my car. Plastidip was pretty affordable, and it seemed like it was pretty DIY friendly. The first plastidip job that I did was in 2013. There wasn't many affordable pigments at the time, so pretty much your only options were off-the-shelf colors from Plastidip. Because I wanted something custom, I decided to mix a couple colors. I did 3 gallons of blue and a half a gallon of black. When it was in liquid form, it looked really dark. I didn't even think it was going to look blue until it all dried and I got full coverage. And I sprayed it with my friend Scott, who at the time was working at a place that had an open bay. It took a little bit longer than I thought it would, and we wound up finishing at like 3 a.m. and did a photo shoot the next day. That color was kind of dark in person, but it looked really bright in the sun. It kind of looked different depending on what kind of camera took the picture. But I was really happy with how that turned out. I wound up getting a lot of exposure and being in calendars. Around that time, everybody said Plastidip was cheap and looked like crap, but I had a lot of good stuff happen, and it kind of proved all my haters wrong, which was a nice feeling. I really liked how that color turned out, and I was afraid to change it. I kept that color until December of that year. Around that time, I wound up renting my own garage, and I wanted to experiment a lot more. I also wanted my own garage because I was doing Plastidip as a side business because I got so much attention over that first color. Around that time, pigments became a little more affordable, so I wound up buying one called Merlot. I really wanted to do a red because it's almost the opposite of blue. And the Merlot was a little more pinkish in person. It kind of looked like it was copper in certain lights. It had a really cool sheen depending on how it was lit, but overall I was really happy with how that turned out. That color was just Merlot Pearl mixed in with clear Plastidip over top of black. It was pretty easy to do. That pearl cover is really nice. That color also got me in a second calendar for AmericanMuscle.com, which was distributed in 5.0 magazine, and again, a lot of the naysayers probably had a copy of it sitting somewhere in their house. So I kept that color on for a couple months. Around that time there was a couple Mustangs that did the same exact thing as me. Not that I'm against being influenced or copying off of somebody, but I just wanted to have something unique. A little bit after I did that color shift pigments became a lot more affordable. There was a company called Paint with Pearl that had a cyan to purple flip that came out. DipYourCar has a really similar color that's called neochrome. A lot of the pigments between companies kind of look similar. That color was just sprayed on a black base. It covered really well. When I got that color, I wound up spraying it on a small little model car, and it looked really cool. I knew it was going to be something special. Color flips weren't really popular in 2014, even with vinyl. One time somebody cut me off and literally stopped and got out of the car and said, "What is this color? How do I do it? How much money do I have to give you?" So if you like attention, that was a good one to get attention. Because around that time I was trying to do Plastidip as a side business, it kind of became a thing to change the color at every big event that I would go to. And with Mustang Week coming up that year, I found a gold to blue or gold to green pigment on Paint with Pearl's website. I don't even know if Paint with Pearl is still around, but that color was a white pigment. I sprayed it over a black base. With it being a white pigment, you have to be really careful when you spray it. There was some whiting out in spots, like the door jambs kind of got a little cloudy. There was a little bit of a spot on the hood that was kind of like a streak, but it looked really good in the sun. Everybody seemed to like it at Mustang Week, but because of those whiteout issues, I did peel that one pretty soon after. I think that color was only on there for about a month. It kind of looked like Legend Lime from a distance, like that one 3-valve Mustang color. I like a nice golden green, so I really did like that color. I wish it would have turned out better, but again, that was just being inexperienced. And it was important to experiment at the time, because if I was doing somebody else's car and messed it up, that would be really bad. It's better to mess up your own car when you're doing these kind of things. So after I peeled that color, DipYourCar came out with a bunch of alien pearls. The GC47 was the one that I sprayed next. That color was really bright and vibrant and had a really nice look to it. The pigment looks white when you get it. Again, if you spray it heavy in spots, it's going to white out. So it's not the most user-friendly pigment, but because I messed up that previous color a little bit, I knew not to spray heavy and not to bump my gun and spray heavy in one spot. You had to be really consistent. When I first got that color, I wound up just spraying the wheels and left the car black so I could go to a couple shows. After I did the wheels, I did the whole car and went to American Muscle show that year. I wound up winning a Celebrity Choice Award from Vaughn Gittin, which was awesome. I won the previous year too, which was just crazy that he gave me both years. I think a lot of people were mad about that one. After American Muscle, I kept the GC47 on for a while. There was a lot of people that did that same color around that time because it looked looked so good. But I really wanted to go to H2O that year. It was one of my favorite car events before it got really bad. It was always a diverse group of different types of cars and builds, and it was really a nice show back in the day. Because I had been to a lot of Volkswagen shows and had a lot of Volkswagen friends, I had this idea to do a Harlequin. I had photoshopped it a few months prior and told a couple people that I was going to do it. And I had a feeling that if I did it, it was going to make a lot of people mad and hate me, and that's exactly why I did it. A lot of the colors were leftovers from previous dip jobs and from other customers. I wound up going with the pistachio base. My friend Andy's car was green and it was kind of similar to the pistachio base. I did have a bunch of those little Performix, little colored liquid tints laying around, so I did tint a couple colors. The red was basically the Merlot tinting out to a heavier red. Like I said, the pistachio, I might have added a little bit of yellow to it. Most of the blue was stuff that I had left over from my original blue plastidip job. And then yellow was the only color that I needed to buy. So that dip cost me about 60 bucks. Before I even got to Ocean City, people were hanging out of their car taking pictures. I even had a text from somebody who spotted the car and somehow they knew it was me. But once I got down there, the amount of attention was just unreal. The amount of people that were screaming and pointing and taking pictures. Some people said some good things. Some people said some really nasty things that I can't even repeat on YouTube because I'd be demonetized. But overall, that amount of attention, I don't think I could ever top it. With that color on that car, I can't think of another scenario where that would happen. I really wish I was doing video back then because it would have made for some pretty good content, I think. Especially with a really loud Mustang just cruising down coastal with all those colors. Because the colors were pretty dense, I wound up just covering the GC47 with those colors. It made it easier to peel off too. It was a thicker base for all the plastidip. I didn't keep that color on long. It didn't really make much sense to have it that color after H2O, even though it looked so good in pictures and video. Around that time I was working on a government job, and you really don't want any more attention, being that the guards have guns and stuff. So I wound up peeling it all off. I had a couple exotic dancer friends help me peel it in the parking lot, so thank you ladies, appreciate that. After that I just wound up mixing a bunch of random stuff together to make this maroonish kind of color. It was basically stuff that I had left over from customer cars and some of the chameleons. It had like a little bit of a sparkle to it depending on what kind of light you were in. A little bit of a pearl look. But overall the color was just kind of brown and just looked meh. Looked really good in certain lighting situations, but I wanted something a little more flashy. Around that time I wound up getting a new daily, and I started doing more research on making my own body kit. I was kind of getting bored with the Mustang. I did a lot of research on making your own fiberglass mold using foam, and then you kind of put Bondo on it and you put fiberglass on top of that. But when I started getting through the carving phase, my daily wound up breaking. So I had to start dailying the Mustang again. I had to peel all my molds off, and it sucked because I spent a lot of time doing research. Who knows how that would have turned out? It might have turned out like crap anyway, but still, it was a lot of wasted time. So I kept the car in black a little bit after that. But then around that time, I was going to go to NMRA down at Budds Creek, Maryland, and I wound up doing another mix just to have a cool color to have on the car. Around that time, a friend of mine said, why don't you just ask Vaughn Gittin Jr. about the Rtr Fender Flares? I hate asking anybody for anything, but I did. I just asked him when they were coming out, and he wound up saying that he had a set of prototypes laying around in his garage, and he wound up dropping them off. When Vaughn came over, we did a quick test fit on that mix. It wound up messing up the fender a little bit, so I had to respray that fender. And then I went to NMRA and then came home and immediately peeled the car. I just wanted to get that wide body done. Did all the prep work trying to get it ready for cruise week that year. I think I finished the car at like 2 in the morning that night. So somewhere around that time, I had this idea to do a shark mouth. That idea came from Mike from Stance Works from the Rusty Slamington car. That was one of my favorite Stance cars or H2O cars. I just really liked the bomber look, and it seemed like it was done really well on that car. Sometimes shark mouths looked a little cheesy, but when I photoshopped it on my car, it looked pretty cool. My friend Brandon wound up taking my Photoshop and vectoring it out in his program and cutting the vinyl. Because I was trying to get the car ready for Carlisle around that time, he didn't have any matte vinyl, so I decided to spray matte clear plastidip on top of the factory black and on top of the gloss vinyl. I got the car finished super late that night. I think it was like 3 a.m. It seems to be a pattern where I finish a car at 3 a.m. before a car show. And Carlisle was probably a 2-hour drive from my house. I was really tired that day. I probably look really tired now too. I got a stupid day job that makes me work nights and then days and then nights again. And it's making me really tired, and I'm getting tired of it. If anybody's hiring, let me know. So the shark mouth stayed on for a few months. And that was also when we did the first big road trip. Me and my friend Leo drove the car from Baltimore to Michigan to pick up my friend Jeremy. And then we drove to Vegas and California, stopped in Utah, and just had a lot of fun. It was one of the best times of my life. Special thanks to Leo and Jeremy for hanging out with me on that trip. It was just the best time ever. All the pictures and video from that road trip just look so awesome with that car. I was really happy with how it turned out. And really, I didn't think I was going to be able to top that look. So for the next color idea, it was the Splatter Art. I'd seen some art cars at Artscape where people would just throw some paint on a car, but I hadn't really seen anybody do it with plastidip at the time. I wound up doing a white base, so it was kind of like a blank canvas. And then a lot of the colors that were thrown on it were just leftovers. I did buy a couple extra cans and just kind of sprayed out the contents into a cup. I think it was 6 colors total. And then I had some black laying around and I wound up using that as a stripe. The stripe idea was just supposed to be a little skinny stripe, but because I was trying to get it semi-symmetrical, it wound up just getting wider and wider and wider. But I think it wound up looking better that way. When I finished it, a couple friends that I showed said like, I don't get it, but they were wrong. It was cool. One of my first trips was to a Taco Bell drive-thru and the lady called the people from the back to check out the car. So after I saw that reaction, I knew maybe I was on to something. But that color scheme wound up getting way more love than I thought. I thought it was going to get more hatred. Occasionally at a car show, I would hear somebody say, that looks like something my kid would do. But overall, the response was positive. It wound up getting featured by the local news in South Carolina briefly, like for their Mustang Week coverage. There was tons of pictures of it floating around that year. Just driving it around, just seeing people's necks break and taking pictures while they're in traffic. It was just a pretty cool thing. And also that color got me featured on the Ford Mustang Day commercial, which ran on Ford's YouTube and I guess on their Facebook and Instagram. It's kind of hard to find that commercial now because I guess a lot of the footage was just leased. But I made a whole video talking about it and how much I made and all that stuff. If you want to watch that video, maybe I'll link it at the end of this video. That color also got me some business. There was a couple people that came to me and asked me to do it, like my friend Matt and my friend Ricky. And those Splatter Art jobs turned out really cool. I'm really happy with how those turned out. One was the Charger, one was the Challenger, and one was the Corvette Z06. The Corvette was probably my favorite though. That thing looked really awesome. So thanks Matt and Ricky for coming to me for those. And really those are the only plastidip jobs that I like doing now because they're just so much fun. It's really the most fun that you can have doing a plastidip job. So after that season, I was getting kind of bored. I decided I wanted to gut the car and make it a full drag car. I wound up pulling that motor out and putting it in another car, and I took a lot of the interior pieces out of the Mustang. But then I started thinking about it, and I really didn't want to spend $20,000 to buy a built motor and have like a full drag car. And sometimes I have an idea and I just act on it, and I really need to think about it a lot more. I still really want to swap that other car, but I really don't want to spend 20 grand on drag racing. Drag racing's fun and everything, but it gets a little boring after a while. You got to spend like an hour in line to run like a 10-second quarter mile, and yeah, it's fun, but man, that's an expensive hobby. And we were planning on going on another road trip, so I wound up putting the car back together. I had done a few Autoflex jobs for a couple customers at that point. My friend Leo was the guinea pig, but I was really digging the look of a gloss paint job around that time, so I knew I was going to go with Autoflex. The color that I wound up going with was a color from Raail, even though I don't like Raail. It was a color called Ocean Blue. That was a liquid drop-in pigment that was sprayed in the clear Autoflex over a black base. And when I did the first coat, it wound up not covering at all. So I knew that there was going to be coverage problems. So I took 2 little blue Performix tints and throwing that in with the Ocean Blue, and that's what made the color that I have. I wanted something that was similar to Laguna Seca Blue, and that's what the Ocean Blue kind of looked like in pictures, at least on Raail's website when it's just a flat 2D image. But like I said, the coverage was really bad. But overall, that color looked super awesome. It was kind of blue, kind of green. It really depended on the lighting and what camera was taking the picture, but it was more of a dark green. Super fun color. I really liked how it turned out. But because we were going on the road trip again, I had my friend Brandon print me out another shark mouth. It seemed to be a road trip tradition. It's like sharking across the USA. The car looked really good in different backdrops and in Utah and in different videos that I still haven't edited. The trip was a lot of fun too. I did that one with my friend Shane and with Leo again, and some of it with my friend Jeremy. Got a lot of compliments on the car everywhere I went. But like all great things, it had to come to an end. I got an invite to go to Mustang Week in 2018 for TMI Interiors, and I knew I had to do something new. And for a while with Autoflex, I really wanted to try to do a candy. I wound up spraying a bunch of speed shapes for sample colors. I needed to decide on a base, so I wound up picking a bunch of blues and coppers and silvers and blacks, and even some color flips. All of that can be seen in how to pick a rad color for your car. That video does pretty well on here. And then I sprayed that with root beer candy from House of Kolors, and also the Brandywine candy from House of Kolors. The root beer looked really cool, but the red just popped a lot more. With the Brandywine Brandywine, the base that looked the best was the copper base. It looked good on silver, it looked pretty good on gold, but it seemed like copper was the sweet spot. And also around that time, we found out that Didspade made a really big color shift flake. They call them their SuperShift flakes. The one that I wound up picking was a red to gold kind of flip. When it's in its primary color, the flake almost disappears, but then the secondary color just goes to a big vibrant gold flake. It was a really cool effect. Amanda's probably going to take the credit for discovering those big flakes, but whatever. It was my idea to spray it over the red, damn it. I actually planned on doing a whole video series on that color and doing the supercharger and the interior, but there were so many snags when we did all those mods. Some parts showed up wrong, some parts showed up like missing. I wound up building my own tent and spraying it in there so I could keep the car clean because it was summertime and there's a billion bugs in summertime in Maryland. So it was a black base with copper on top, with the Brandywine mixed into some Autoflex clear, with the pearls mixed into some Autoflex clear, and then the Autoflex gloss on top of that. That was probably the most complex color I've ever done. It gave it a nice, real heavy base. It was a really deep and vibrant color. It looked so good on camera and really good in person, especially under the convention center lights. It was just perfect. I really liked how that color turned out. I liked it so much that that's been the color that's been on there since 2018. But with that said, UV light is really bad for plastidip and paint and apparently Autoflex. Because it sat out in the sun for a while, it wound up fading. I have read that the House of Kolor candies don't come with any UV protection. And now that I'm trying to peel that color, it's not peeling well at all. I'm probably about 40 hours into trying to get this color off and I'm still not done. I'll probably make a video talking about it more, but it's going bad. So with that color not wanting to come off and just not being able to buy the new Autoflex, DipYourCar wants you to have a legit shop with a legit booth to even buy Autoflex. So for my next color, I don't think I'm doing Autoflex. I still really like plastidip. It's pretty fun. It's user friendly as long as it's done well. Every color that I've done is peeled pretty good. Occasionally I would need some WD-40 and also dip dissolver winds up melting plastidip off pretty good, but this Autoflex issue is really bad. I think it's part of the reason they don't make the old formula anymore. It's because that UV issue. That green peeled pretty good though, so I don't know. I really think it's the candy's problem. It just thinned out and it's all gummy and it's bad. So yeah, that's all the colors. That's how I did them. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, I have more plastidip videos on all the Splatter Art stuff. And also I'll be doing a video soon on the new color, which I think might actually be cooler than the red. If it turns out good, I think it's gonna be cooler. I think I might actually top my favorite color if this turns out good. If. It's a big risk. It's a risky color, but we'll see. But yeah, anyway, have a fantastic day and I will see you soon.